Hello, hello, everyone. So I am so excited to have one of my very good friends, Theodore Kyriakos, today with me. Theodore is a trained integrative transpersonal psychotherapist, teacher, coach, and supervisor. He was trained and worked and taught in London, United Kingdom, as well as in Los Angeles. Theo draws from the Sufi and shamanic traditions to engage with the shadow in order to reveal wisdom from inner conflict. The focus of his work is to facilitate inner transformation and equip his clients with powerful tools for their inner work. He works one-on-one online with clients and facilitates workshops and retreats internationally. A native of Greece, Theodore brings wisdom, passion, warmth, and humor into his offerings. So welcome, Theo.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Danielle. Thank you for having me today. It's a very interesting topic, and it's one of my passions as well.
I know it's your passion because I've known Theodore for a while. I'm not sure how many years now, but he's been into this work for a very long time, and I really honor his expertise. And so it's just exciting to talk to him about this deeper today. I know a lot of people have questions about shadow work. And so I figure why not just, dive in. I'd love to know, Theodore, if you could tell us a little bit about what you do out in the world.
Well, partly you cover it by your introduction. So I'm trying to use all the skills I have gained throughout the years and all my experiences. If I were to put one intention is to awaken awareness, because I have seen that by increasing our awareness, a lot of things that we long for can happen. Like we can achieve a lot of things we long for just by increasing our awareness. I'm talking about notions like self-love, freedom, authenticity, liberated from things that makes us suffer. That all starts with awareness for me. So a lot of my work, a lot of the skills I use is to just facilitate the natural process of awakening, let's say, the consciousness.
Beautiful.
Thank
Beautiful. So what is shadow work then?
So let me just give a brief kind of definition of shadow, because some people may not be aware of it. Shadow, as we know it, is like if we look at our shadow, it's like if we consider ourselves an object, there is a source of light, and we cast the shadow. So it's a darker part of where there's not enough light, let's say. So if we take that as a metaphor, the shadow within is the aspects, the parts of our self or our psyche that they don't have our light of our awareness, the light of our awareness, let's say. So also we can look at the shadow as a personal thing and as a collective. So there is personal shadow and there's collective shadow, and our personality is influenced by the outer world, and in turn we influence the outer. So we, as the collective is influencing us, we also influence the collective. So it's a feedback, it's a loop. So it's easy to understand that the shadow that we're experiencing also has a reflection in the collective, in the outer, and the outer shadow also has a reflection in our inner shadow. And we're going to talk a little bit more, and we're going to make that more clear. So we are focusing a lot in our lives. There is a lot of focus in what's happening around us, what's happening outside of us. Shadow work is a call, let's say, to turn our focus within, to start looking at the aspects of ourselves that maybe we haven't paid attention a little bit. Or shadow work also can move into the realms of the unconscious. A lot of the times the shadow is unconscious. So a lot of the ways we work with it, they have to be quite creative. We cannot just access the shadow by our mind. Like by thinking, I meant by our mind. Mm-hmm. So the shadow work is about understanding ourselves better. It's about self-discovery. So it's always good to have the curiosity spirit, the spirit of the explorer. It's not always pleasant because we enter places that we might be frightened, we might prefer to avoid. Uh, but it's nevertheless is the only option we have when we want to evolve. Like we cannot just evolve by imagining. Like Jung had a very nice saying. They said we cannot get enlightened by figuring out by imagining figures of light. We have to turn within and make the unconscious conscious. You know. So shadow work is exactly that process of making the unconscious conscious. And go ahead.
And why do we repress things within us?
We don't always do it on purpose, but sometimes, you know, it's a natural outcome of not wanting to feel pain, which is natural, or not wanting to suffer, you know. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, again, what I say is just like, I'm not covering everything. Like I'm just throwing some perspectives. It's not all perspective, you know. So the shadow work is in other ways we can see it as a path of self-integration. You know, it's a path that will lead us to self-forgiveness, and I would say lead us because, for example, when we do shadow work, we just focus on understanding things too. It has to do a lot with mindfulness too, and other tools. It's not just mindfulness. Which mindfulness, we know it's one of the oldest tools we have for self-awareness. You know. So as we do the work, the process of self-integration, which means like the parts we have disowned coming back into us, the process of self-forgiveness, compassion, self-compassion, liberation, freedom, authenticity, self-love. These are all outcomes of this process of knowing ourselves better. Like we cannot force forgiveness, even not only to another person, but only to ourselves. We have to change perspective. If we see something differently, then maybe there is not even a need like this. Maybe we'll see that there's nothing to forgive at some point. I don't want to make a blanket statement here. I'm just giving you some notions because we also we have a lot of trauma in our world right now. So I don't want in no way to suggest that we have to forgive or so this topic can open up into a lot of different areas. So the shadow work is a lot about growing and becoming whole again, and finding cultivating ways of being that a lot of people long for, like freedom and self-love, and not just self-love, but when you start loving yourself, you start loving other things as well. When you start connecting with yourself, mm-hmm. you start connecting with others, you start connecting with the planet as well. So it's the inner reflects the outer always,
Right. Is there any part of our shadow that is positive?
Oh, you really like that question. I know you do.
I don't know if I worded that.
It's a good question. I just wanted to leave it for a little bit later, but I guess we can. It's okay. It's fine. But we can engage with that too. Yes, there are aspects of the shadow that can be positive. Basically, the shadow is when we're looking also at the distortions in us, like things that have been distorted in us. So let's say, let me explain this with an example. It's much easier. So let's say we're envy of someone. Okay, so you can say this is our shadow. I'm envy of X, Y, Z. If we start noticing what exactly we're envy at, let's say I'm envy because you're very good, you're very comfortable with the way you engage with people, the way you talk to people, the way you're always. And I'm finding myself getting more and more envious of that. Then I have to look at the qualities that I just mentioned and say, okay, so how do I relate with these qualities? Maybe I need to figure out how to cultivate a little bit of more of these qualities that I'm envy about. maybe I should cultivate, and maybe it's a longing. Maybe my envy is it's a repressed longing to achieve something, to tap into an untapped part of myself. So I'm envying you because I see them in you have them, and as long as I keep the projection there to you, I will never have the opportunity to say, oh, wait a minute, maybe I can see how I can cultivate that. Maybe if I cultivate that in myself. So then in that way, the shadow, my envy, holds an untapped part of me, which is the part of me that wants to get more comfortable with people, let's say. And that, again, is a journey for me. Another example, let's say I'm getting angry with someone very often. And okay, so let's say I'm a person that always likes to play nice. Okay, and these are just examples.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe, okay. So maybe you tell me if you relate to that, if you want. So let's say someone that wants to play nice, and I am investing in this role. So sometimes when I invest in these roles to be nice, I always kind of ignore some of my needs, and then that starts to anger me. When I and the way the anger may appear is I see someone that doesn't care, like holds their boundaries really clear and doesn't care if how this is going to affect the others. It can be in the other spectrum. I'm not saying we have to become them. You know, it can be someone that is not empathetic at all and doesn't care about people and only do what they want. And these are the people that trigger me a lot. It doesn't mean I have to become like them, but I say, what is it triggering in me? It's like that he doesn't care. I say, okay, so how do I relate to that? No, I'm all over caring. Okay, so if I had a little bit of what he has, how would it look like? Or maybe I would say no sometimes instead of yes. I still will support people because that's my personality. I always want to help, but maybe I have to find a way to balance it. So if I recognize what am I angry for, and then bring it back and see how do I relate with this? Like, where am I? No, I'm not at all like that. When we say I'm not at all like that, like this guy I'm angry with, that's okay. Maybe do I need some of his medicine? Not in the distorted way he's carrying it, maybe. Do I need some of it to make my life more balanced? Mm-hmm. So that's how, there's the shadow is basically a distorted quality. You enter in the distortion, you enter the shadow to retrieve the quality that needs to come and be manifested. So that's it's part of how we evolve, you know?
Yes. Yes.
It makes sense?
Yes.
Okay.
And why do we get triggered? Do you know, like, how can you explain?
What do you mean? Why we get triggered?
Why would I be triggered by that? Like, why does that happen? Do you know? Like, why?
Well, I mean, exactly of what I said. So when we get triggered, the other person holds something of our shadow. Okay, that doesn't mean you know that's why it's difficult, this conversation, when it's out of context, because there are valid reasons we can get triggered, but even on those reasons we can still, like, even the person that is kind of cruel and heartless, we can still find something to retrieve from, not the distortion, but the essence of what they're doing. Let's say that they don't care. Okay, so how would it be if I had a little bit of that medicine in me, or not caring, not caring, but
strong boundaries, like you said.
Stronger boundaries, yes.
Yeah.
So so this analysis might need help sometimes, because I also almost said it, like the distortion will be, oh, so I shouldn't care that much. No, it's not that. It's like, I care, but what is it that I'm getting at? Okay, the way they set the boundaries, and it looks like they don't care. Oh, they might not be caring, but the boundaries are really clear. They don't spend energy for others, just for themselves. Okay, so a little bit of that. Okay, so I need to spend a little bit more energy for myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I am in balance, at least an equal amount as I'm caring for others. So I don't get off balance,
Right.
So the triggers are entry points to the shadow. It's like how the system works. It's like this thing is like putting a finger in the wound,
Right. And it seems like we get so triggered by people who we just can't understand. They're so different than us.
Yes, you don't have to understand them fully why they're doing what they're doing, but it's still a good idea to figure out what is it that really triggers you and how do I relate with that myself.
Got it. Awesome. So, what would be an example of what could happen if we leave our fears unchecked or our shadows unobserved?
Okay, okay, so it's the Pandora's box.
A lot.
Yes. So first of all, we can get stuck in repetitive experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Like we relive situations inside of us and outside of us even. So, and we go into places where when we start saying, my God, why does this keep happening to me?
Mm-hmm.
It's not about your luck. It's something about your shadow that is replayed. And we have a little bit of a role. Like we cannot take responsibility of how another person acts, but we can take responsibility of how we act.
Mm-hmm.
And not again, I'm saying this with caution, because the minute I say that, I'm thinking, what if a person has been repetitively raped?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to put the blame on that way. She's doing something wrong. But when there is a repetitive experience, there's definitely an aspect of our own shadow that we can find out,
Yeah.
And maybe it has to do with boundaries. Maybe it has to do with taking care of ourselves in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a lot of things. But I don't want to put the blame on a victim of abuse, okay, in a way, because you also have you have the situation that let's say someone is I work with abuse a lot, so someone is being abused from very young. It doesn't mean that because they didn't check the shadow as a baby they experience that what they're experiencing. So we're not talking about that. I'm just saying that sometimes as adults in our lives, when we have repetitive experiences, we can these are entry points again for our shadow. If we leave our shadow unchecked, we can kind of co-create like a situation. Let's say I'm having trouble with my parents all the time and they're not listening to me, but I do have to check how I respond to them. What is my reactive self in this situation? In that context, I'm saying it. So please, I don't want people to take things out of context here. It's the other thing it happens when we leave our shadows unchecked. It's like all the forces of fear go underground.
Mm-hmm.
So in that way, they become like an invisible puppeteer.
Mm-hmm.
So because we want to avoid the fear, maybe we're not conscious, but we want to cling to safety, or we want to avoid our pain or our anger or whatever, then we become reactive in life. So basically, we're not free. We're not acting free. Another thing can happen is we can split ourselves into pieces. I mean, because if we leave our shadow unchecked, whatever the shadow is holding is there.
Mm-hmm.
It's not integrated. So what we were talking before, it's like you're calling parts back into integration. You engage with the distortion, you bring the quality that is hidden behind the anger. It can be the vulnerability, the wounded child. You bring it in, you integrate it. End result, if we avoid the shadow, all the mental health issues we see can rise from avoiding the shadow. Not all of them do, but all of them can rise from that. So we become more neurotic in our behavior, like wanting to keep our balance, but we're holding it in our space very neurotically, like we hold in our boundaries very neurotically. We can become depressed, which is like we put energy, our own psychic energy, to oppress something which is again us. So a lot of energy is spent there. It's like depletion of life force as an outcome.
Yeah.
We can become more angry. We can suffer more. There's so many things will happen if we leave ourselves unchecked.
Right. Totally. I have a good example of if we go back to the first one, which is the repetitive cycle.
Yeah.
bullied a lot when I was little, and it continued to show up for me throughout my life. And what I was asked to do is like not try to be the nice girl all the time. Like we were saying, I raised my hand, I've always had to be that nice girl, thought I had to be like nice and, good girl. And I didn't know how to just stand up for myself. And so I had to learn that. Even in my adult years, I would have people who would come into my experience and they would like be bullying me, I was back in middle school, and I had to learn to say, have boundaries. And then I was able to break that repetitive cycle.
Yeah. And at that, what you're describing, there's also an underlying fear that leads your action, like manages your actions. Like being nice, it's not always because, I know you're a nice person, but you can be over nice because there is an underlying current of fear, like, oh, what if I don't play this? It's not conscious, but then I can be bullied. Then I can be
exactly. That's what
told off, Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. So it kept it going.
Yep.
So what are some ways then, Theodore, that we can recognize our shadows?
Work with therapists. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, that's
fair enough. That's real stuff.
That's like self-promotion, Okay, no, okay. So let's talk about some ways. So recognizing our own projections, like I said before, like who am I? Who is triggering me? What is triggering me in life? And then start exploring that. And there is, this is a learning process how we do that as well, so that's why we can read about it. We can work with someone that knows how to do this work. So recognizing our projections, what we projecting to each. Okay, so projection, wait, it's a little bit different. Projection is basically when we put some of our own feelings onto another person. So when we feel like this person is getting angry with us all the time, and maybe they're not getting angry with us, but we still feel that this person, so that's projection. Have you had this situation that you feel that the other person may be angry with you, and when you check with them, they're not?
Yes.
We can stick in believing that the other person is angry is not telling us, but maybe we can say, okay, wait, maybe I'm projecting something here, and just figure out, why do I feel this way? So internalize. Okay, so what's happening here? We have, I feel there is anger. So I have to check, is there anger inside of me as well, or just outside? So working with projections is one way to do it. Asking people that we know care about us, and that's important, not to ask anybody. How do they perceive us? Tell me how you see them, because it's when we look ourselves in the mirror, we'll see ourselves in the mirror. So it's always interesting to see how someone else sees us. That doesn't mean what they see is just us. They can also be projecting, but never hurts to check. Sometimes there is a mirroring. So I may be projecting to you, but you also may be carrying something that I'm projecting, So it's interesting to always check, okay, how do you perceive me? Like, how did you feel about what I did in this? And maybe, take it, let's say if I'm in a relationship with someone, maybe ask them about the situation that they weren't involved. I'll make it a little bit easier for them. If the person has done a lot of work with themselves, you can ask them directly how they perceive you in the relationship as well. Or you can say both, and then figure out, you don't have to take everything on board, but you say, okay, so what about this? Do I do this to a level or not? Because again, they can also be projecting. So it gets a little bit complicated. We can notice, again, what triggers emotional reaction to us. Anything from a situation to, it can be a volcano that triggers something powerful in us, So we can check, like, if something in nature triggers something frightening, we can see what is it that is reflected back. What is the qualities that scare us in that kind of, can be the power of the thunder, or it can be the volcano that is the fire, the angry fire that scares us, you know. But it's very interesting to use things outside of us like this. And again, it takes training to do that. And dreams as well. Dreams, like dreams, can have a lot of unconscious information. And if we learn how to interpret it, we can use creative expression. There's so many tools. We can draw and then learn how to read, like to understand, to look at the drawing as a mirror of our own psyche. We can write stories. Once upon a time, like when we face in a difficult situation, we can make ourselves a character and write a story about it. And then there are many ways. Many creative ways are better, because then not unconscious cannot be accessed by direct logic and thinking. You know, it has to. We have to trick it. You know.
Wow, that's so cool. I actually remember one time I went to one of your workshops, Theo, and we drew with crayons. It's been a while now, but
I remember that. Yeah.
I remember that. It was in Venice, and I drew a tiger because we were working with our spirit animals.
I don't remember, not to tell you what we did. Maybe we did,
animals and
so just describe your experience. Yeah.
I just remember the thing I got from that was that my power was tied to my anger. And I was like, whoa, you know, and that really, I've been processing that for years since, and it really makes sense. It kind of, again, ties back to the nice girl always want to be nice and not allowing my anger to be validated, you know, for all those years I had to be so nice. But in doing that, I was really squashing my power down even.
Yeah. And you know, in the beginning, it might feel to you that you shouldn't be so nice, but you can still be nice, but it will change the quality of nice. It will be more authentic nice, and it will not going to be from fear. It will be more authentic. Like, I'm not saying that you're not authentically nice as well now, but some instances there might be fear into your niceness. So it's like purifying it. So the tiger for you, for example, can help you access the, like, you know, when you asked me before about the positive aspects of shadow, you see it in the tiger. You see the anger, and you see the power as well. And then if you work with imagination, like when the tiger appears and you don't have a good relationship, for example, with the power it represents, the tiger might appear angry. And you can even be scared of it. The more you get to know it and you engage with it, and that's one way to work, like active imagination, you called it.
Cool.
And then as you engage with it and you start communicating with it, and there's a script for that communication, because you don't want to interfere, you want to facilitate process, not to interfere with the outcome.
Right.
Then the relationship changes, and then you start integrating. As you start integrating psychically, then you have to also integrate it in everyday life, start manifesting that integration, so it becomes a solid thing. You know, it doesn't become just something in the realm of your imagination.
Right.
All these stages have thresholds that you have to pass. We have to pass through fear, you know.
Yes, got it. And yeah, that's true. When I first saw the tiger in my imagination, I was afraid of it.
You were okay.
Yeah, you led us through some stuff, and I was able to get close to it and get comfortable.
And then it changed at some point in the how I was guiding the script. It changed the relationship with the tiger, didn't it?
It did.
Yeah. So because I was guiding a few people, and I have done from 3-4 to 120, I don't tell the person, oh, now love the tiger, or be, no, it's very just questions like, the script is about just integrating what you see, like talking to it, asking questions, even becoming it, experience it from within. So all these levels of interaction automatically change the relationship, because you start seeing something more. Oh, wait, it has power. Or now it's not so scary because I can feel this is my power she's carrying. Oh, wait, she's angry because she's been oppressed by the way I was acting. You know, I was oppressing my own power. Okay, so maybe if I don't oppress my power so much, if I put my boundaries a bit better, maybe the tiger will be more fun to engage with. So, you know, as we increase our awareness, things change, things come closer. And then when they come like this, the third position that is going to arise from that, from the two opposites coming together, It's going to be more advanced position that holds qualities both from the one and the other. Is neither the one nor the other. And then the next opposite pair appears. So it is like always when you engage with something in you that is scary, there is another thing sitting across it. So it's always in pairs. It's dual. It's because of duality we can evolve. Like if there is no here and there, if it's oneness, we cannot experience anything. Mm. In oneness state, you don't experience anything else than oneness. Mm-hmm. So there's no evolution in that sense. So the duality is very important. Like I see people, no, we have to go past duality. No, it's duality that teaches us. We have to hold the concept of oneness, but it's duality where the battle is, you know? Mm-hmm. You know? And yes, of course, there might be a longing for oneness and peace, but I guess this life is about learning, you know?
Hmm. So you feel that in this life, it's more about learning from duality rather than merging into oneness, or?
Look, I don't want to make my own assumptions. I say, let's say the life already has an intelligence. So I'm just trying to figure what's that intelligence instead of making my own assumptions of what intelligence should be. So right. If life tells me there's left and right, like a plant has consciousness and an animal has consciousness, and then we need to feed, and then we have to use other animal or plant. And I don't agree that plants don't have consciousness. I believe plants have consciousness. So they're living beings like everything else. Everything else is made from the same basic it's vibration. You know, we cannot find matter, it's energy, but everything has the same. If an atom here and an atom here is both carbon, but this one looks like a plant and this one looks like my body, I cannot assume that my body is more consciousness than the other being that has the same right. Basic structure, basic molecules, you know. So, you know, it's an interesting concept to see, like, I have to take a life to feed my life. And forget about the animals. Even if you just talk about plants, I have to. And if that's painful, then how do I change my way of conducting myself with my food? You know, mm-hmm. How do I respect both me and that? And what's the learning from that? It's not an easy thing. Someone has to die for someone who has to live. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting, and it's harsh reality. This for me sometimes, you know. Right. Or, you know, thinking how we all one, and there's so much suffering and abuse in the world, like connecting with oneness and then connecting with all the separation and the pain, you know, what we create to each other, you know.
Right.
It's very interesting, like just to wonder about if this is a reality that we have been offered. What is the message from that reality? What is the learning, you know?
Right. Right. So in some of your writings, you talk about, you know, the fact that we cling to our beliefs out of fear. Mm-hmm. So do you feel that it's healthy to hold our beliefs loosely, or better just to let them all go altogether?
I think both have a function. There are times that we need to hold on to a belief very tightly because it will serve a purpose. At the same time, in the long term, in the long run, I would always suggest to put a question mark, no matter what we believe. There is a very interesting saying in the Christian tradition, the Bible, in the Orthodox Christian tradition, I don't know if it's in the other Catholic or anything, that they say, I'm going to loosely translate it from Greek. They say, believe, comma, not question the divine and the. So it's believe, comma, not question. And basically they moved the comma, they shifted the comma a little bit. It's believe not, comma, question everything, basically. And that's something supposedly Christ said. Mm-hmm. So it's very interesting, like even the big sages and the big prophets, they always question the reality. Mm-hmm. That's how they were able to break one by one its layers, because truth is veiled with thousands and thousands and infinite amount of layers. So when we see a truth, maybe serving at some point, and then maybe if we want to go deeper, we need to question and maybe enrich it. Doesn't mean we have to question it that it's not valid. Mm-hmm. Question is like, is this 100% truth?
Right. Or is it serving me?
Yeah, and when we hold the belief as absolute, then there's no room for seeing deeper. It's absolute. There's nothing else to know.
Yeah.
When we leave a question mark to our truth, we leave a space for learning. And it's we have personal beliefs. A lot of times personal beliefs are self-serving. They may be serving our safety. Yeah, you see, it's a very funny thing that's happening right. Like, it's not a funny thing, but sometimes I can laugh with it. But it's something that is like, you see, like people with the pandemic, they're choosing sides and they defend their sides no matter what. That is an absolute belief, like it's an absolute truth. I'm sorry.
Right.
So you have, let's say, the ones that say we shouldn't wear a mask, and the other ones say we should wear masks. And as long as we hold our belief as absolute, there's no space for dialogue. We reject everything that doesn't fit, cognitive dissonance. We reject anything that doesn't fit our belief. We won't even look at it. But in fact, if we really want to understand what is, and why is it the truth is important, let's say with the masks things. If we believe 100% that the mask will protect us from everything, then we may endanger ourselves more because we may not take other steps to protect ourselves. And I'm not examining now the mask nor how the thing is. I'm just using an example.
Sure.
If we believe that the mask are absolute no protection, then again we can put ourselves in more danger. So it's like having a conversation. Like I don't see people having conversations. It's like what we are taught from very young is to choose a team or maybe choose a political party and then become obey it like we're little subjects, to that authority, So we defend our team no matter what. We defend our president no matter what. And the other team is doing the same. The people that are most sane and they can see more of the truth are the people that are in the middle. Like, okay, I can choose a team, a party, a president, but then I'll still hold him responsible for what he doesn't do right. And I'll still say good things when he does something good. And the opposing party that I don't like, I still gonna acknowledge the thing it is doing right. And I still gonna oppose with the things that is doing wrong. In this reality, I can still choose, but I don't choose like a follower. I choose as a thinking human being. I say, wait a minute, okay, that you did good, but you did also that, and that I'm not okay with. And when we don't want to enter that level of discussion, then it's all black and white, and there's not evolution really,
Right.
It's just people fighting with each other. So even universal truths I will question, when it comes time, I will question them, because we may misinterpreting a universal truth. Tell me a truth that you consider is a universal truth in the universe. Can something come? Do you have anything coming up?
Truth. I believe in law of attraction personally.
Okay, so law of attraction. If the law of attraction, you believe in the law of attraction like 100%, saying that you can attract anything you like, when it doesn't happen,
I don't know.
Let's say exactly. No. Let's say I'm putting it in a very specific frame. I'm putting it in a very specific frame. Let's say if you believe in the law of attraction as I can manifest anything I like, then when things go wrong, you'll turn against yourself. And then you will have to question that law of attraction the way you learned it the first time.
Yeah.
Or if you don't question it, you're just going to continue beating yourself up when it doesn't work. You're going to be super excited when it works. But when you be more realistic and say, wait a minute, why I was taught that, but sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. And then it pushes you to move deeper into the reality of what's the law of attraction. Has it happened to you, this one? Like you had someone taught you the law of attraction like this, and then you say, wait a minute, there's some kind of weird things happening. Yeah, sometimes I get it, and then I feel guilty and I beat myself up, whatever. And anyway, something might have happened to you. Then you say, wait a minute, I'm going to question that. So that universal law, in order for you to understand and integrate it better, you need to question it. If you maybe you would question it through life experiences. If you don't, you're gonna end up in a distorted way, either being like a completely blinded teacher that teaches the wrong things, or being always in self
Defeat, beating
prosecute,
myself up, and yeah.
self defeat and beating yourself and prosecuting yourself. So that's why I'm saying. So even you have, you know, the answer to that question. You have questioned your universal beliefs, and we must keep questioning them, because that's how we understand things better. That's what I believe, at least.
Right. So I know you talked a little bit about how, how what's going on with this pandemic and how things are showing up. I would love for you to talk just a little bit about our collective shadow, and how you see that showing up right now.
Okay, so I'm just, there are many, like, as I said, the personal shadows can also be projected into the collective. So if we want to understand the collective shadow, we can look at our personal shadow and then extrapolate it out into the world. Let's say, so there are many as shadows as we have. We can see it in the collective, also because we are part of the collective. We constitute the collective consciousness. But one thing that it's like I can see, one thing, not the only thing I can see right now, is like this this virus and the reaction to this virus. One thing it shows us is like, oh, the borders are not so real on this planet. Like, again, it's one more reminder, because not the only reminder. I go, okay, so what they do over there affects us over here. If there's an agenda behind there, it can affect the result over there. So even the truth that sometimes it's communicated, sometimes it serves a political party, sometimes it actually serves health. We saw like a little bit of problem, let's say, with the hospital. I'm just mentioning one thing. It's like the hospital, the state says, okay, we're going to give you some support for the COVID patients. And then someone is greedy and suddenly start putting a few more patients as COVID, because they take a little bit more money. It messes up the statistics. And then it's like, so it's one thing that we start seeing is like, we live in a system. We're not separate entities living in our own worlds. So the system is interconnected, there's inter-affecting each other. So when something happens there, it's a ripple here, it moves over here, and move it. So, and it's many systems. It's not just one system. Like politics, health, economies, money. So planet, so, it's interesting that we start to see that we have, it's not so much me, it's us. And maybe we should move a little bit, reevaluate our core beliefs, how we live in our lives. We have a little bit drops of there. So, suddenly the footballers and the Kardashians are not so important as the doctors and the epidemiologists. Again, this is just, it shakes us a little bit. So we can take these opportunities to actually question our beliefs. Another core belief is like that we are all powerful and we can do whatever we want on this planet. It's almost like we behave like the planet belongs to us, which is quite maddening. Like, it's not a sane position to have. And for some people, it's such a core belief that they won't even question it. The planet doesn't belong to you. The planet is going to be here way after you. Right. It's going to be here for billions of years, probably. And you just a drop here. You cannot act like you own the place. Maybe the place owns you. Maybe you're serving it, and you're serving a system, your system as well, but also the collective system. And the system is not here. It's like a very anthropocentric still, like the old times we say all the universe is around the earth. I said, yeah, but we evolved now because of science. We know that the earth is around the sun, but psychologically we still like everything revolves around us. We are the chosen ones. Right. We are the chosen ones. So a little bit questioning this, because it's nature in imbalance when something like that happens, or nature trying to get back in balance. And but we need to keep an open mind when we if we want to see what we're called to do here, because now the other problem is we get very frightened.
Yeah.
Confusing information, we get frightened, and when we get frightened, we cling to safety. So it means this is a fear control basis reaction. So we want safety, and because we want safety, we might choose a belief, like we said before, and choose to hold on to it because it makes us feel safe, and we don't want to question it. And I'm talking about the left and the right, the up and the down, whichever belief you have. And then we hold it on like this. No, 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 no. This is what you're just fool, you're the crazy, you're the left, you're the right, you're whatever. Right. You, and we're not even talking about the issue. I'm just blaming each other. Like, go away, you're wrong. Because we're frightened,
Yeah.
But that's why the shadow is important to be engaged, because if not, we get in that kind of state we're now. If we're in that kind of state, we deprive ourselves from a lot of things, and we can be deprived. Like a frightened person can even give up the sovereignty of their being willingly, because they want to feel safe,
And also they stay separate,
Yeah, and we see it in the conditioning in small children as well, where the mother sometimes tries to frighten the child so they can comply, Go to sleep, because if not, that will happen. The closet master will come out, like the old times,
Yeah, right.
So maybe we should start thinking, maybe we can use this time of collective crisis to maybe reevaluate our core beliefs. Why is it power and accumulation of material wealth, not even material, even spiritual wealth? Why isn't it like, why can we do something that is more pro-life? Oh my God, this has a lot of connotation. But anyway, I mean, take it out of context. But pro-life is like that sustains life,
Yes.
So it's like, why? Like, for example, you remember we went to Crete, and the Minoans, they worked a lot of harmony and beauty. We can add love to it. So we can. Why not we put this as core beliefs? Why are we so frightened? Why we? Because accumulating wealth is out of fear. We're not going to take any of that with us.
Right.
Deforestating just to make a few millions right now, or to just have 20 things instead of one in the house, is not going to take that with you when you pass. So why not reevaluating the core beliefs when we are in crisis? Right. Health, harmony, law, even just health. Because even in this case, you say how we can be more healthy in ourselves and in the planet, and keep the planet more healthy. Which we are a closed system with the planet, right? We drink the water, we breathe in the air, and we get it out, and then we breathe it again. I'm constantly in a loop with the planet. I eat the food, I excrete the food, it goes back in the ground, comes out, it's a constant loop. Why we consider that as different than our system?
Right.
And we live a life that it kind of it puts a lot of strain, a lot of imbalance in the same system that sustains us physically. And so yeah, maybe we should reevaluate the core beliefs. I'm a strong believer of that. Maybe we need a different kind of society from the roots.
Theo, what's the wildest thing that you've ever experienced while you're helping someone integrate a shadow?
Falling asleep.
That's the wild.
This has happened, but I used it as when it was a lot of this has happened as well. So the many wild things, you make your pick. So sometimes it's like things like realizing at some point, it was wild in the beginning, like how interconnected we are when you can process information more than what you can see and hear and think, and you can actually feel. When you see things like the other person is hiding from you, and I'm not saying like these fake mediums. I see a D in your life. Yeah, something is happening with someone called D. No, I'm saying seeing a full name, like, and like really accessing information in a very detailed way, like the minds become one. Or having someone come to you feeling suicidal, and then 10 minutes into conversation you realize they tell you that they think they're being possessed by something, and dealing with the possession the same way you deal with feelings, and then suddenly what they thought is a demon is integrated into them. So many wild things can happen, but they're not wild for me anymore,
Yes, probably just
they're just it's just like the wild thing is like how many layers of what we observe, like of the reality we don't see. So our observation is so limited. So the wild thing is when these limits are breaking, and you can see a bigger picture in one way, in all these situations I described,
right.
When a person is telling you their dream and you see more details than the way they describe it, and you check with them, and it's exactly like that. So it's the wildness is how interconnected everything is, how wild it is. It's like it's not what we thought. Like the wildness is not okay. So it's not that box I was taught. It's a whole infinite world that you can keep piercing in and deeper and deeper and deeper into. That's why I'm crazy with this work. Like I really love this work because it has led me to see more beauty, more harmony, more love. I'm not a masochist. I don't like going through my own death, but I have to if I want to see more.
It seems like the more you work, the more you do this work, the more we look at these demons and fears and shadows and all of it, and we can start to really see how it is all perceived. And same with, I suppose, beauty and all of it too, but something happens when you do this work.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you're aware, like a lot of traditions, like Buddhist tradition and Hindu tradition and other traditions, and the deepest practices are things completely different what some people are trying to do right now. So it's like, there's a lot of a tendency to force transformation nowadays, which means you're engaging with something painful, and then and it's forced, what I'm going to describe now, and then you imagine golden light coming and clearing it. That's forced, and it doesn't necessarily process anything. You just say to your mind, feel the anger, and then say to your mind, feel golden light clearing it, and you feel better, but you haven't processed anything. It has a time and place for this as well, this kind of relaxation, if you want to take a respite or something. So you have that from the one side, and then you have the practices that you go to the cemetery, you call your demons, and so you feed the demon, you call the demons, and you feed the demons your essence. Imagine you giving them your nectar, your body, and this kind of practices. You say, no, that's crazy. No. This is the practices that take you through, because the demon you feed in is none other than something of this oneness. Maybe if you don't want to say it's yours, maybe it's your ancestor, maybe it's like, how the Buddhists say the practice should be for healing all things. Yeah. And now we have, we're living in a time that even in psychotherapy, which is supposed to be more rigorous training, but you see some branches of the psychotherapy, when it's not in-depth psychotherapy, they're trying to fix things, not to help a person process it. It's a different intention. It's not like, okay, yes, it's about healing, but when you're trying to push the agenda of fixing, then you're ignoring process.
Yeah, right.
And then you ignore, and you don't want to go to the dark. You always, and there are ways, you have to go in there. There different people need different pace to go in there, depending on their life experience and where they're at. So I'm not saying this everybody is like, oh, let's go dive into our depth. No. But eventually what will free you is what scares you the most. If you go through it, then you have a real sense of freedom. If it scares you and you run up the mountain, that's not a real, because you might be always afraid that it might come and find you. Once you go through its mouth and you come out on the other side, then that thing, and you still see, oh, I'm still whole, maybe even more whole and more free. So that's the essence of this work, you know. It's not very popular, let's say this, but
it's not
getting there.
Right?
Getting there.
Yes. A good example, an example I would like to just bring up quickly is that I feel like our culture, I mean, we've embraced coaching, for instance, and I've been a life coach for a long time now, but I've integrated other things into my practice. But, you know, a lot of our training was about, you know, ignore your emotions, you know, find the solution, don't be a victim, you know, and there's definitely some really amazing training I got out of that, you know, the programs I did, but that fixing mentality sort of, you know, over this deeper processing. And that's something I had to discover over the years for myself.
Yes, the processing it's quite not so, it's more masculine kind of energies. And I'm not saying man and women here, I'm saying masculine and feminine, which it's the two aspects of yin and yang, and, you know, so the process is not something we really taught. You know, we're not taught connection, we're not taught because the teachers that teaches us, they still are, we always transmit when we teach our own shadows. And our own shadow, again, is our evolutionary edge. You know, we go into the subject that's how it works. You know, you need the opposite, you know, you need the demon, you need the dark, you need whatever, you know. So process is a very interesting thing if we learn to trust it. And then it's almost like the way once it was described to me, it's like the canoe is in the river and you can row, but it doesn't make any sense to row reverse of the river. You have to, the river will take you where it wants. You just have to use the rows to make a safe passage. So both the river and the canoe is within us. It's kind of the will and the Sophia principle, the loving wisdom, the feminine principle, which always flows. And then the will has to become a servant of that. It's not a servant. It's not a servant. It's like left and right hand. You know, the one helps the other. So the wisdom, the loving wisdom, is the compass, and the will is the action, the divine action. You know, that should be arise. Now, our evolution took us to the place that we have disconnected from that, and now we're kind of called to rise the feminine again, kind of put the head below the heart. These kind of metaphors, you know.
Yes, totally. Yeah, thanks for explaining that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Could you lead us briefly through just an exercise that, you know, could show us what your work feels like, or just how it connect to
so I'm not going to take you through like, I'm just going to give you some tips, you know, because shadow work, again, there can be many tools, but basically you have a person across you with their own experience at their specific state in their lives. But an easy way to do it is like do this kind of reflection that we mentioned before. It's like we can check out what kind of qualities do I see, distortions I see in a person that I don't like, you know? What kind of qualities do I see to a person that I do like, or even my lover? You know, when we fall in love, it's a great projection of our own divinity into another person. That's why we fall in love. We're in cloud nine. We met our goddess or our god. And then after a few months, it's like we start seeing the person and we go, and then we have to find again the balance, you know?
Right.
So that crash is because we crash from the projection. But at that point, we can own so it's like we can own what we have projected in our lover, so we can keep the relationship in a different and more real meeting. Like we meet the person, not just our gods.
Right?
Yeah, the honeymoon is we meet our gods, you know? And then it's life, and it's like, can we grow together, you know? Are we willing to do that? Is there love to be able to be out of love to face our fears? So, you know, looking at our partner or at a person outside us, what we dislike or what we admire, and then bringing that back to us and do a self-reflection. It's like we can meditate on it and we can observe ourselves. How do we relate with this thing we dislike? How do we relate with this thing we like? What can we do? Because after we start realizing stuff, then there is action. Like I said, how can I integrate that knowing more into my life? It's not like, okay, I show my shadow and I leave it there. Like, what can I integrate more in my... So mindfulness is a very powerful tool. Contemplation, observation, mindfulness in the sense that we connect with what we observe, we sit with it. We don't try to judge it. We don't try to interpret it too quickly. We just observe it in the beginning. Okay, so this is how I react when I see this. Okay, that's an interesting observation. So anything that turns you within and helps you sit with yourself and observe yourself helps you into your shadow. I work online, so I'm more than happy to work with anybody around the world. Sometimes, you know, people come not because I'm in my main practice psychotherapy, but sometimes people come and they just say, okay, so can I learn a few tools to just engage with my shadow more? And because I know how to teach the tools as well, because I have taught even therapists, so it's a useful skill set, you know, to have. But setting the intention is the number one, because someone that listens to this interview or is interested, it means that they can set an intention for themselves. So once you set the intention, you say, I want to find the real, the truth. I want to be able to, then you start looking. And then, you know, if something comes and doesn't feel like it helps you see clearer, just makes you feel better, maybe you say, oh no, maybe that's good, but not, I keep looking. You know, it doesn't matter. It has to feel right for you. So if it doesn't feel right, if I tell you you should be doing this, you might not be in the stage that you can enter that realm. But keep an open question. You know, I have had clients that came to me in the fourth session. I said, oh, I understand that what we do here is very important, but I came here for you to tell me how to change my partner. I didn't come here to see myself. And then this client left and they came after 5 years when they were separated. They remembered and they came back. So not everybody is like, we sometimes we need to go through experiences. Right. You know, this life is about experience. It's not about becoming great. Yeah, okay, if that happens too, it's great. But it's experiences. Everybody has that. No matter where they're born, no matter how where they are, everybody has experiences. So why did I say that? I don't know. I lost the thread. But yes, so you know, even setting an intention, understanding our experiences here better, it will start turning you within and entering you into the cave. You know what Joseph Campbell said. You know, the cave you're afraid to enter holds the treasure that you seek. And it is like that. You know. Yes. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Yes, thank you, Theo. I really appreciate it.
Yes.
If people want to get a hold of you, how can they do that?
Well, they can do it through my website. I don't know if you can put it somewhere in the video. Or my email is mypsychotherapist@gmail.com. One word, mypsychotherapist.
Okay, awesome.
@gmail.com.
Great.
So it was lovely connecting with you.
On the phone and Zoom or?
Yeah, I usually use, I can use Zoom, WhatsApp, FaceTime, depending what kind of devices people have.
Amazing. Yeah. And I think this work really lends a hand to guidance of some sort, especially because it does take you to such deep places. And so.
Yeah. And you know, the guidance is how you use the tools, you know, and then the person guides basically how the psychic guides us. But my work is more like, okay, so these are the tools. This is the communication skills you can have with your inner demons. And they're actually communication skills you can have with your own demons. Or this is how you use your creative expression to understand yourself better. I work a lot with artists too, and I use their own creative expression and show them how to use that as a means to understand and deepen their awareness in themselves, you know?
Amazing.
Yeah, it's fun.
Very cool.
Sometimes.
Thank you again. And for everyone else, I will see you in the next interview.
Thank you. Bye, Danielle.